And we are back, and we just finished watching We Feed People from 2022, 1 hour and 29 minutes. This is currently streaming on Disney+. This is the story of Chef José Andrés' journey into making the World Central Kitchen that has been at the forefront since the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, and going to these areas that have been impacted, whether by natural disasters or war. I think his organization is currently involved in the Ukraine, among other places, and where they have taken up the call to basically feed people. This is a documentary. This is a true story of this chef's journey from coming, I guess, from Spain, having a very good career, establishing some restaurants here in the States, and then answering this call to basically be his brother's keeper. I watched this with my kids. They weren't too into it, so I guess I will be doing most of the talking, but I will ask, I guess for just thoughts from you guys about what could have made this storytelling better. I personally enjoyed this film a lot.
Nothing would have made the storytelling better. It's just like I wouldn't watch this movie to waste my free time.
Okay. What would have made this story better in order for you to be invested in the story?
Nothing would have made this movie better. It's just this movie. It's a documentary. I'm not interested in those.
Documentaries really run the range. It's not just one thing. Just because something is tagged as a documentary doesn't make it not worthwhile storytelling. And that's the thing I was trying to get across to you kids, but you really didn't give this movie a chance. And that's fine. That's fine. Everybody
wasn't even paying attention in the beginning.
You know what?
You're just staring at the couch.
Neither one of you really gave this movie a chance. It was only an hour and a half.
I watched the first 30 minutes, half an hour of the movie.
I understand that, but guess what? This movie was an hour and 30 minutes, which is not a long time. That's 90 minutes. 90 minutes of just
I actually watched a little bit more than 30 minutes.
You left and then you came back. True. You came back and I think you were paying attention to some of it. But still, this is not, again, just because there isn't explosions or cool effects doesn't mean that this isn't worthwhile storytelling. So I'm going to ask you again, Ology, what would have made this better for you? And don't tell me it's not something I would watch. I completely understand that, because much like a lot of people, you hear the word documentary and you just completely turn off, and that's whatever. I don't expect you to act more mature than that, but tell me what you think would have made this better so that you could have been more invested in the story.
I don't know.
All right, fair enough. What about you, G? You are also not into this. What could have made this storytelling better to get you more on board with it?
I don't know.
All right, that doesn't really help, but okay, so I will go back and discuss this film. This is by director Ron Howard, who also has had an interesting trajectory as far as career, started out as an actor and then started making movies. And as of fairly recently, it seems like has been telling, I guess, more real life stories. This, again, is the story of Chef José Andrés as he goes from being a famous chef with restaurants and a pretty great life to being more a citizen of the world by taking up this calling of feeding people. It's a very simple act, but in it, the rewards are immense and priceless. You see the constant struggle to kind of stay afloat, to kind of be organized, to kind of set these things in motion. I think in the beginning, he obviously had many, many well intentions to just go in and feed people, because I think in feeding people, you create a place of safety, you create a place of community. And in a lot of these places that have been affected by either war or natural disasters, it's so important to have that thread to kind of help you survive whatever awful thing is going on around you. And this really runs the range. Again, his whole organization started in 2010 with the earthquake in Haiti, which devastated so much of that island and really impacted the local populace, killed so many people. And as time goes on and as they gain more experience, you could see that this organization really comes into its own, really gets into kind of a groove and set up a system where they can go in, get to whatever local resources they need to, and then just feed their people. I think another really great thing about this story was at the beginning when he's talking about how he's come to do this thing, and the local woman was basically like, well, this isn't how we eat beans or whatever it was. And how he was a little insulted because I guess he thought like his good deed was being looked down on. But then he realizes, he takes his own self and his own ego out of the equation and realizes, I can't be the white savior. I need to be as one human being to another, extending my hand in help, but in a way that doesn't diminish these people, doesn't take away their dignity, and is organic to the local customs, traditions, and the local food. And I think that that was an important lesson, because when people open up these boxes of food and they see the local cuisine, this is part of who they are. This is part of home. This is part of their culture. And maybe in those moments, they don't feel so afraid and so alone, especially after, again, devastation like natural disasters or wars. Olive G, did you find anything about this in the time that you watched the film? Did you find anything interesting or...
I found it interesting that he was helping, like, basically entire kind of like islands almost.
Right. Some of those numbers are pretty impressive, right?
He was basically helping an entire, like, civilization of people. Like, he was basically feeding them.
Right. That's the job, right? We feed people. That's what the World's Central Kitchen is there to do. I think that's a great point.
I think the Central Kitchen thing was like for natural disasters, right?
Well, no, that's the name of the organization as a whole, World Central Kitchen. So they basically service the world. Wherever they're needed, that's where they go.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get it.
What about you, G? Was there anything in the time that you did watch the film that maybe impressed you or you thought was interesting or...
I also thought it was impressive that I helped like whole islands. Like he had that much determination to help people.
Exactly.
Also, I thought the food he was making looked really, really good.
Yes.
It really did look really good.
Yes. The story is interesting because it starts sort of in the present, but also cleverly weaves part of José Andrés's history, but without overpowering what he actually does today. You find out about his roots, you find out about his early family history, you find out about his restaurants and journey to what led him here to do this thing that he now is very active and passionate about, almost to the exclusion of and sacrifice to his own family. I mean, you see how
at the end of the movie, he says that he has to go back.
Right, because his wedding anniversary is coming out, his 25th, which is a big deal, right? And he should be home. Yeah. But who knows? As this is also such a lovely portrait, not of just him, but even his family dynamic. When they show videos of him cooking in the kitchen with the daughters, I think that's really great. They get commentary from the wife, and one of the daughters is like, my mother has like a backpack ready for him at all times, because you just never know. You never know what new thing is going to happen that he needs to go and address. And that's very, very powerful. That's very, very powerful. And you also see a lot, and some of it in the story is addressed about how what is the word I'm looking for? The ineffectiveness of government kind of doesn't help matters, where he needs to get through some of this red tape to be able to get funding to help these people. And that's also another thing. I mean, none of this is free. So a lot of this is a lot of volunteer people, a lot of people sacrificing time with their families, a lot of people putting in very long hours in some very hostile or not super safe situations to feed these people that are in dire straits. They go from 2010, they address some other disasters. They also do a little bit about feeding people in a time of COVID. They start about March of 2020.
Yeah, like, didn't they give out medicine too?
I think they did. And I think one of their big goals in 2020 was to address taking care of health workers because, as we know, they are basically essential workers. They've never not been able to not work unless they've come down with the virus itself. And they've been on the forefront of this, just doing the work that needs to be done because it is what it is. This is the job. This is the job to serve the populace, to take care of them and to help them get better. Also, in that scenario, to the exclusion of their own mental health, their own familial responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's lovely and beautiful and kind that José Andrés realizes that. And even with a small gesture of like a boxed lunch to a nurse or a doctor so that they feel that comfort. I think that's huge. I mean, we talk about sitting at the family table and being together and having these experiences with your family where hopefully many years from now, you guys will go back and remember like the laughs and the important lessons that we've tried to impart to you kids as parents. And also springboard off that, maybe you take that into your future homes with your own families. I'm completely amazed and awed and just humbled by people like this who, again, to the exclusion of themselves, are their brother's keepers, do the work to make sure that everyone's taken care of.
Are you?
I'm going to cry. It's been a very long week. This was the week of the Uvalde shooting in Texas.
Which was very sad.
Which is very, very sad. It's horrible. And I'm sure José Andrés and his staff will go out there to try to give some comfort to these people that are hurting so incredibly badly. I think a few weeks ago, I happened to watch CBS Sunday Morning, and they did a little piece about José Andrés and Ron Howard, and this is how I knew that this movie was out, and I wanted to watch it. And it just really speaks to me that this man who has his own life, has his own family, has his own businesses, took the time to really recognize that there's so much need out there, that there's hunger, and that if we all stick together, we can definitely solve this problem. I think that that's an invaluable lesson. We're in a country that has so much, and yet it is still virtually impossible to feed every person in this country. There are people, there are children, there are old people, there are disabled people, there are people of all religions, ethnicities that still in the year 2022 go to bed without a drink of water or food in their belly. And that's shameful. And I appreciate people like José Andrés, and I hope that whether this was a boring story or not for my children, I hope that the lesson here is that we're all in this together. The things that bind us are so great as opposed to the things that separate us. Our political leanings, our ethnicities, they're secondary. At the end of the day, we're all just people. We all bleed, we all die, we get sad, we get happy. Nobody wants to be alone. And food is comfort. There's solace in that. And there's magic in people that look beyond the little things to make a bigger impact in their community.
I actually really like the ending because that's where like I actually came back to watch it, and how like they were in this town and like this little boy was helping them like find people who were hungry. And that kid also fed that cat.
Yes. That's also a lovely example of compassion and empathy. where this child who's familiar with the neighborhood and probably knows where to tell Chef Jose to go takes it upon himself to bring him to all these neighbors so that they can be fed, and doesn't overlook the little kitty cat. And it's a sweet part of the story, and it just shows that together we can really do great things here if we really, really want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that message isn't lost on everybody either. I highly, highly, highly recommend this film. It's not very long. It's only an hour and 30 minutes. I'm assuming it's rated PG because there wasn't any cursing, and any cursing that there was immediately
it was blurted
bleeped.
out.
Yes. There is no IMDb rating, but again, this is a film that very much is sort of a great springboard if you want to have a conversation with your kids about service and maybe even future goals. Maybe there's another José Andrés out there in the making who will take their skill set and feed others. If I was going to give this film a rating between 1 and 10, I would give it an 8.5. Again, I feel like the story moved really quickly. It covered a lot. It wasn't boring to me in the slightest. I think a lot of the players in the film, Sam and Nate and Kyle and Jose's wife and his daughters, I think it was just such a beautiful exercise in storytelling. I think that the thing that makes this more special is because it's rooted in reality. Again, this is a documentary. It's not flashy. There's not going to be crazy stunts and car chases and crazy effects and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, if you can sit and really allow yourself to be taken for this ride on this man's journey, basically from small town son of 2 working healthcare workers. I believe he said his parents were both nurses, to this world-renowned chef with his fame, and just again this call to action. He could have looked the other way. He didn't have to go to Haiti that initial trip, but he did, and so many people were so much better off for it. And his work has continued in other places. There's a huge segment of the film is devoted to his time in Puerto Rico after the hurricane there that devastated the island. And again, you get a sense of this man's, listen, I'm sure he's not perfect, but he has done a good job of really trying to be an instrument for good in this world. And if more people could do that, this place would be so much better off. I hope that whoever you are and whatever you are, you use your superpowers for good. And that's it from us, and we will bid you all a good night.
Good night.
Night.